"Don't open that book," she whispered. Too late. Mr. Halloway had already seen the photo inside, and he set his fork down slow, like the whole room had gone quiet just for him. "Whose child is this?" he asked. Nobody answered. My stepmother's hand was still frozen on the cover of that album, like she could somehow take back what he'd already seen. "My name is Renee Ashford. I'm 34 years old. I work as an archivist and photo restorer, which is a fancy way of saying I fix broken pictures for a living. I have a small rented studio downtown, with peeling paint on the ceiling, and a window that never closes all the way. It's not glamorous. It never paid much either. But it's mine, and nobody handed it to me. I grew up the stepdaughter in a wealthy blended family, the kind of family that took vacation photos in matching outfits and never once thought to include me in the frame. My father remarried when I was 6. From that day on, I was treated less like a daughter and more like hired help who happened to share his last name. My mother's side of the family,
the people who actually loved me first, got erased from every conversation. "That doesn't matter anymore," Vivian used to say whenever I brought up my mum. For years, I believed her. But quietly, in the back of that little studio, I'd been restoring old photographs and documents that belonged to my birth mother's estate. Piece by piece, I was putting together a story nobody in that house wanted me to finish. I wasn't rich or glamorous. I didn't have a big house or a family name that opened doors. But I had something they never expected. I had proof. If you've ever felt like the forgotten piece of your family's story, hit subscribe right now. I want to hear how you found your voice again after people tried to bury it. Click hype and let's go. The dinner had started out normal enough, as normal as dinners in that house ever got. I'd brought the album because I wanted to show Vivian one photo, just one, of my mother smiling at a birthday party years ago. I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd let that small thing exist without a fight. She snatched it from my hands the second she saw what it was. "Don't open that book," she whispered, glancing around the table like the walls themselves might judge her. But Mr. Halloway, our longtime family friend and a man worth more money than the rest of the family combined, had already leaned over. He'd already seen it. The photo showed my mother standing beside my father, decades ago, holding a stack of papers that looked official.
Too official for a birthday party. "That woman was nobody," Vivian snapped, trying to laugh it off. "She has nothing to do with this family." I felt my face go hot, but I kept my voice steady. "She was my mother," I said, "and apparently she had more to do with this family than you've let anyone believe." Mr. Halloway squinted at the photo a little longer, then looked up with an expression I hadn't expected. Recognition. "That's a property deed," he said slowly. "I've seen that kind of document before. Isn't that the land your family has held for 20 years? The table went dead silent. You could hear the ice shifting in someone's glass. Vivian's smile cracked at the edges. She ordered the album taken away immediately, snapping her fingers at the housekeeper like it was nothing, like she could erase the last 30 seconds the same way she'd erased my mother from every family photo for years. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. Questions were already forming in the eyes of everyone at that table, and for the first time in my life, I watched Vivian struggle to find her next lie. The week after that dinner, I found out I'd been quietly removed from the family's annual property meeting. Nobody called to tell me.
I found out through a text from my cousin that simply said, "Didn't think you'd want to come anyway." When I asked Vivian directly, she barely looked up from her tea. "This doesn't concern you," she said. It stung, but it wasn't surprising. Exclusion was Vivian's favourite weapon, quiet and deniable. Then came my cousin's engagement party. I showed up in a dress I'd saved 3 months to buy, hoping for one night where I could just belong. Instead, Vivian introduced me to a group of her friends with a tight little smile. "This is Renee," she said sweetly, "the help's daughter, bless her heart." A few people laughed, awkward and unsure whether it was a joke. I stood there, holding a glass of lemonade, feeling my whole chest cave in. I didn't cry. I'd trained myself out of that a long time ago. The third betrayal came from my half-brother. He showed up at my studio unannounced, offering to buy the album outright, cash in hand, like my mother's memory had a price tag. When I refused, his voice turned cold. "You'll regret that," he said. 2 days later, I got a call from a gallery I'd been under contract with, an old family friend's business, letting me go without explanation. I knew exactly why. Something shifted in me after that. Instead of folding, I got quiet in a different way. I started digitizing every photo, every letter, every scrap of paper from my mother's boxes. I had a feeling there was more waiting to be found, and I wasn't going to let them scare it out of me.
What they didn't know was that my mother had kept records of everything. Every promise, every signature, every lie anyone in that family had ever told her. Buried at the bottom of a storage unit I'd almost forgotten I still paid for, I found folders of old letters and a notarized copy of a deed my father had never once mentioned. My hand shook as I read through page after page. The land the family had been renting out for 20 years, the land they bragged about at every dinner party, was never fully theirs to claim. I didn't confront anyone right away. I had a plan they never saw coming, and plans like that need patience. I spent weeks restoring each document carefully, scanning every page, cross-referencing dates and signatures until I had something nobody could argue with. A complete file, airtight and undeniable. I remember sitting alone in my studio late one night, the smell of old paper and dust thick in the air, thinking about how long they'd underestimated me. They had no idea what I was quietly building in that small rented room, while they laughed about me behind closed doors. An old family lawyer named Mr. Delacroix reached out to me not long after the dinner incident. He'd handled my father's estate decades earlier, and had always seemed uneasy whenever Vivian was in the room. I always suspected something wasn't right.
He told me over coffee, his voice low. The way the estate was divided never sat well with me. Together, we confirmed what I already feared and hoped. The deed was authentic. My mother had been a legal co-owner of that land, and her name was never properly removed from the title. Meanwhile, the family grew careless with their confidence. Vivian began finalizing the sale of part of the land, certain I had no proof of anything. She told people at church I was bitter and delusional, chasing shadows from a mother who'd been gone for years. I let her talk. Every word she said just made the truth land harder later. A sale date was set. That gave me a deadline, and for the first time, I felt something other than sadness. I felt ready. The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and fresh coffee, and the sound of the clock on the wall ticking felt louder than anyone's heartbeat.
The family gathered that morning, expecting a routine signing. Instead, they got me, and they got Mr. Delacroix, standing beside a folder thick enough to end every lie Vivian had ever told. "You have no right to be here," Vivian said the moment she saw me, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I didn't flinch. "Actually, I have every right," I said. "My name is on this deed."
Mr. Delacroix laid the paperwork on the table, page by page, calm and methodical. He explained, in a voice that left no room for argument, that my mother's ownership had never been legally dissolved. That meant the sale sitting in front of them was invalid without my signature. The buyer's attorney, sitting quietly at the end of the table, looked up sharply. "This transaction can't proceed," he said, closing his folder, "not without her consent." I watched Vivian's confident mask shatter in real time. My half-brother's jaw tightened, but there was nothing left for him to say. Every insult, every exclusion, every cruel joke they'd made about me over the years came crashing back into that room, and this time it landed on them.
Years of dismissing me as irrelevant had just backfired completely. I sat there, holding legal leverage over the exact thing they'd tried to take without me. I didn't seek revenge. I want to be clear about that. Instead, I negotiated a fair settlement, one that finally recognized my mother's place in that family's history, something they'd tried to erase for over 2 decades. The family was left to face the consequences. Relationships that were already fragile grew even more strained. The sale collapsed publicly, and word got around about what they'd tried to hide. I didn't have to say much. The truth did most of the talking for me. I walked away with legal ownership, financial independence, and something I never had growing up in that house, an acknowledged place in my own family's story. They spent years trying to erase my mother from the pages of our family. All it took was one photograph to remind them she was never gone. Has your family ever tried to erase someone's place in the story? A parent, a sibling, or even you? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear how you found your proof and your voice. Subscribe to stay connected with others who've reclaimed their place. Click hype to help this story reach others who need it.
Standing up for yourself is tough. If you've been there, subscribe and become part of our community. Let me know this story helped by clicking hype, and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel.